Most people have never read Ecclesiastes 11. Their pastor skips it. Their Bible study ignores it. But hidden inside this one chapter is a complete financial formula, more sophisticated than anything in a Dave Ramsey book, more strategic than anything Goldman Sachs teaches their analysts. And it was written 3,000 years ago by the wealthiest man who ever lived. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never read money the same way again. Here is what you are going to walk away with today. Ecclesiastes 11 contains 5 distinct financial principles that together form a complete wealth-building system. Not 5 random verses, not 5 nice quotes, a system with a logic, a sequence, and a result. We are going to go through every single one of them, and for each one, I'm going to show you exactly what Solomon wrote, what it meant in his world, and what it means for your bank account, your investments, and your financial decisions right now in 2026. By the time we reach the 5th principle, you are going to understand something that most Christians have never connected, that Ecclesiastes 11 is not a spiritual reflection. It is a financial manual. And the reason most people stay broke is not lack of income. It is lack of the framework that Solomon already gave us and that we have been walking past every Sunday for years. Make sure you stay through principle number 4. That is the one that changes how you think about risk forever. Before we open Ecclesiastes 11, I need to give you some context, because there is a reason this book is so consistently overlooked, and that reason itself is a financial lesson. Ecclesiastes was written by Solomon at the end of his life, not at the beginning, when he was ambitious and rising, not in the middle when he was building the temple and expanding his empire, at the end, after he had acquired more wealth than any king before or after him, after he had tested every financial theory, after he had seen what worked and what destroyed people, including for a season himself. This matters because Ecclesiastes is not idealistic. It is not Proverbs, where Solomon is teaching you how to build wealth. Ecclesiastes is where Solomon is showing you how to see wealth, how to understand its nature, its limits, its patterns, and its traps. Proverbs is the construction manual. Ecclesiastes is the architect's notebook. And the people who only read one without the other are always building in the wrong direction. Now, here is where it gets urgent for us today. We are living in an economic moment that Solomon specifically described. Inflation is eroding purchasing power. Jobs that existed 5 years ago are disappearing. Interest rates have reshaped what it means to borrow, save, and invest. And most Christians are reacting to this moment with either fear or passivity, either paralyzed by anxiety or waiting for a miracle that God has already encoded into a chapter they have never studied. Ecclesiastes 11 was written for exactly this kind of season, and Solomon begins it with one of the most counterintuitive commands in all of Scripture. Principle 1. Cast your bread, the law of aggressive generosity. Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Verse 1 says this, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." Now here is what most people do with this verse. They read it as a spiritual encouragement. Be generous, give, trust God. And yes, that is true. But Solomon was not writing poetry here. He was writing strategy. In the ancient world, casting bread upon the waters was a reference to maritime trade. Merchants in Solomon's time would load grain ships, their bread, onto vessels and send them out to sea, to markets they could not see, to customers they had not yet met, with no guarantee of return. It was the most aggressive and most productive form of commerce in the ancient world. You did not keep your bread safe in the storehouse. You sent it out, you put it to work, you let it travel to places you could not go yourself. What Solomon is saying in modern terms is this: your money must move. Idle capital is dying capital. The person who holds their savings in fear because the waters look uncertain is the person who eats nothing for many days. But the merchant who casts his bread, who invests, who deploys, who puts his resources into motion, finds it returned to him after many days. The financial principle is velocity. Money in motion creates returns. Money in fear creates stagnation. And notice that Solomon does not say, if you find it, he says you will find it. The return is not uncertain. The timing is, and that distinction is everything. In 2026, casting your bread looks like this: investing consistently even when markets are volatile, deploying resources into income-generating assets even when the economic waters feel rough, giving generously even when your own margin feels thin. The bread you hold back out of fear is the bread that never returns. The bread you cast in faith is the bread that multiplies. Principle TWO diversify 7 ways. The portfolio law written 3,000 years before Vanguard. Now here is where Ecclesiastes 11 goes from spiritual poetry to financial precision. Verse 2 says, "Give a portion to 7, or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may come upon the land." Read that again. Give a portion to 7, or even to 8. Modern financial advisors call this diversification. Vanguard built a trillion-dollar company on this principle. Harry Markowitz won the Nobel Prize in economics in 1994, something called modern portfolio theory, the idea that spreading investment across multiple uncorrelated assets reduces risk and maximizes long-term return. He was celebrated as a genius. He should have cited Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 2. Solomon wrote this 3 millennia before the Nobel Committee existed. He encoded the foundational principle of portfolio theory into one sentence, and then he gave you the reason for it, because you do not know what disaster may come, not if disaster comes, what kind of disaster. You cannot predict which sector collapses, which economy struggles, which investment falters, so you do not put everything into one place. 7 portions, or even 8. Solomon is being almost aggressive here about the number. He is not saying 2 or 3. He is saying 7. The implication is that real diversification requires more breadth than most people are comfortable with. Your income, your savings, your investments, your giving, your time, all of it should be spread across multiple streams precisely because you cannot see the future. If your income depends entirely on one employer, you are violating Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 2. If your savings are in one account at one bank, you are violating Ecclesiastes 11:2. If your investments are all in one sector or one asset class, you are violating Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 2. Solomon is not asking you to be reckless. He is asking you to be so strategic that no single disaster can wipe you out. This is not a suggestion. In the original Hebrew, the structure of this verse carries the weight of instruction. This is wisdom handed down from the wealthiest man in human history, and most Christians are living with one stream, one account, and one plan completely exposed to the disaster Solomon told us was coming. Principle 3, neither wind nor cloud. The law of action over analysis verses 3 and 4 of Ecclesiastes 11 deliver something that should convict every person who has ever said, "I'm waiting for the right moment to invest or I'll start saving when things stabilize." Verse 4 says, "Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap." This is perhaps the most psychologically precise verse in all of Scripture on the subject of financial paralysis. Solomon is describing the person who waits for perfect conditions before they act. The farmer who watches the wind before planting will never plant because the wind is always doing something. The farmer who watches the clouds before reaping will never reap because clouds are always shifting. Perfect conditions are a myth, and the person who requires perfect conditions to act will die waiting for them. Now consider what this means in today's context. Every week, there is a reason to wait. Interest rates might move, an election might shift policy, the market might correct, inflation might change, the economy might do something unpredictable, and while people watch those winds, the people who are actually building wealth are planting anyway in imperfect soil, under uncertain skies, without a guarantee of tomorrow's weather. Solomon is not saying be reckless. He is saying be decisive. There is a profound difference. Recklessness ignores risk. Decisiveness accepts that risk is always present and acts anyway, because the alternative, perpetual watching, perpetual waiting, is guaranteed poverty. The financial formula hidden here is this: action in uncertainty beats paralysis in uncertainty every single time. The person who plants in imperfect conditions has a chance at harvest. The person who never plants has no chance at all. What have you been waiting to do financially? Start the account, make the investment, begin the business, pay off the debt because the conditions were not right. The conditions will never be fully right. Solomon, who had access to more economic data than any person alive in his time, is telling you that even he could not predict the wind or the clouds. You do not need perfect conditions. You need the decision. Principle 4, the mystery of the womb, why you diversify even when you cannot understand the result. Verse 5 is the one that most people skip because it sounds purely theological, but this is the verse that changes how you think about risk, and this is the one I told you to stay for. Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 5. says, as you do not know the way the Spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. Solomon is making an argument for mystery. He is saying, there are processes you cannot see, mechanisms you cannot understand, outcomes you cannot predict, and yet life still happens. A child still forms. Bones still come together in the womb. Life still emerges from what is hidden. And just as you do not need to understand embryology to trust the process of birth, you do not need to understand every financial mechanism to trust that God is working in what you cannot see. This verse is the theological anchor of the entire wealth formula. It resolves the tension Solomon created in the first 4 principles: act, diversify, plant, give, even though you cannot see exactly how it will work. The God who assembles bones in the womb is the same God who assembles harvest from your planting, return from your investment, and provision from your generosity. But here is what makes this a financial principle and not just a spiritual one. Solomon is addressing the root cause of financial paralysis, the demand for certainty before action. Most people will not invest because they cannot guarantee the outcome. They will not give because they cannot see the return. They will not plant because they cannot control the harvest. And Solomon is saying, you never had that control. You do not even understand how a baby forms inside a womb, and yet you trust that process. Extend that same trust to the financial principles I just gave you. Stop requiring full visibility before you move. The God who builds bones in the dark is building your financial future in the seasons you cannot see. Your job is to follow the formula cast, diversify, plant, act, and trust the one who understands the work you cannot. Principle 5, sow in the morning, do not rest. The law of sustained, multiplied effort. Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Verse 6 is where the formula completes itself. Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening do not let your hands be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. Every word in this verse is load-bearing. Sow in the morning. Start early. The person who delays the beginning of their financial discipline by 10 years does not lose 10 years of savings. They lose 10 years of compound growth. The cost of waiting is not linear, it is exponential. Solomon knew this not because he had a calculator, but because he had watched markets, harvests, and economies across his entire reign. At evening, do not let your hands be idle. Continue through the full day. Financial building is not a sprint. It is a sustained rhythm. The person who starts well and then stops is not better than the person who never started. Consistency is the engine. Evening here is not just the end of the day. It represents the later seasons, the difficult periods, the moments when the effort feels fruitless and the temptation to stop is greatest. For you do not know which will succeed. This is Solomon returning to the diversification principle from verse 2, but now applying it to effort rather than assets. You do not know which seed will grow. You do not know which investment will perform. You do not know which income stream will accelerate. So you maintain multiple streams of effort, morning and evening, and you allow God to determine which produces the harvest, whether both will do equally well. The best outcome is not that one thing succeeds. The best outcome is that multiple things succeed simultaneously, and that outcome is only available to the person who sowed in multiple directions consistently over time. This is the complete formula. Cast generously, diversify widely, act decisively despite uncertainty. Trust the God who works in what you cannot see and sustain your effort through every season. 5 principles, 1 system, 3,000 years old. And still more sophisticated than most financial plans sold in bookstores today. Here is what nobody teaches about Ecclesiastes 11, and this is the thing that will stay with you longer than anything else in this video. Ecclesiastes was not written by a man who had just discovered wealth. It was written by a man who had lost the thread of it, who had allowed wealth to become his god, and who was now writing from the other side of that mistake. Ecclesiastes 2 tells us that Solomon tested pleasure, projects, accumulation, achievement, and found that without wisdom at the center, all of it was vapor, vanity of vanities. So when Solomon sits down in chapter 11 and gives you this financial formula, he is not writing from theory. He is writing from recovery. He is the man who had everything, lost the wisdom that produced it, and then returned. And from that place of return, he is handing you the system. Not so you can become rich, but so you can become faithful. There is a difference. The formula in Ecclesiastes 11 is not a path to accumulation. It is a path to stewardship. Cast, diversify, act, trust, sustain. These are not the habits of a person chasing wealth. They are the habits of a person who understands that wealth is a responsibility entrusted by God, not a trophy earned by ambition. And here is the cross-reference that almost no teacher catches. In Luke chapter 16, verse 11, Jesus says, "If you have not been faithful with worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches?" Jesus is asking the same question. Solomon answered, "Faithfulness with money is not a financial question. It is a qualification question. The wealth is a test. The formula is not the destination, it is the examination." Solomon figured this out in the hardest possible way. You do not have to. Here is what I want you to do this week. 3 concrete steps grounded in what we just covered. Step 1. Write down the 5 principles and name your current position in each one. Are you casting your bread, or is your money sitting idle out of fear? Are you diversified into 7 streams, or are you entirely dependent on one income source? Are you acting on your financial decisions, or are you watching the wind? Do you trust the process even when you cannot see the result? And are you sowing consistently in the morning and in the evening, or are you seasonal with your financial discipline? Write it down honestly. Solomon said in Proverbs chapter 27, verse 23, "Know well the condition of your flocks, and give attention to your herds. Before you can improve your finances, you must see them clearly." Step 2. Identify one area where you are watching the wind and make the decision this week. One account to open, one debt to begin attacking, one investment to start, however small, one stream to add. Not all 5 at once, one. The formula starts with a single cast of bread upon the water. Step 3. Commit to reading Ecclesiastes 11 every morning for the next 7 days. Not as a devotional exercise, as a financial briefing. Read it the way a CEO reads a strategic memo. Ask yourself each morning, which of these 5 principles is speaking to my current financial situation? Let Solomon mentor you directly. He is the most qualified financial teacher in human history, and he wrote everything you need in 6 verses. I want to close with something that I believe with everything in me. The reason most Christians are financially stuck is not because God withheld the answer. It is because the answer was hidden in a book they were told was too philosophical, too heavy, too abstract. Ecclesiastes has been dismissed as the sad book, the cynical book, the book about vanity. But the man who wrote it was the wealthiest human being who ever walked the earth. And the formula he left in chapter 11 is not abstract at all. It is precise, it is practical, and it is available to every person watching this video right now. God did not give you this formula as a distant ideal. He gave it to you as a daily instruction. Cast, diversify, act, trust, sustain. I want to close by asking you to say this declaration out loud. Say it with me and mean every word. I am a faithful steward of everything God has placed in my hands. I cast my resources with confidence because God determines the return. I diversify with wisdom because God told me to prepare for the unknown. I act without requiring perfect conditions because God does not call me to understand the wind, He calls me to plant anyway. I trust the work of God even in the seasons I cannot see. And I will sow in the morning and in the evening, faithfully and without stopping, because I do not know which will succeed, and I believe God may cause both to flourish at once. This is the formula. This is the covenant, and I receive it today. If that declaration resonated with you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, not as content, as a gift. Someone in your circle is watching the wind right now, waiting for the right moment, letting fear keep them idle. This formula is the answer Solomon already prepared for them 3,000 years ago. And if you want to go deeper into what the Bible actually teaches about building wealth, watch the video that comes up next. We are going to go into Proverbs 31 and show you why the woman in that chapter was not just virtuous, she was a wealth-building machine, and she was using a system that still works today. God bless you. Now go cast your bread.